What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Shred Show Live. I'm hanging out with a new friend and a legendary top mortgage pro. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't heard of Brian Scott Cohen, I don't know where you've been hanging out the last few years, but this guy is truly one of the legends of the mortgage industry. Top producer, always on the Scotsman's Guide, 6 billion plus in production in his career. Ladies and gentlemen, he's about to drop so much knowledge, so many things that you can learn from and you can grow from. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? It is time to shred. Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and again, welcome to the Shred Show. I cannot tell you how stoked I am. I'm truly fortunate and humbled. Our good friend Mario Trotta actually introduced Brian and myself, and I don't know how him and I haven't connected over the years, but I'm truly humbled and grateful to have him on the show this morning because he truly is, as I mentioned in my introduction, he's one of the top producers in the country, but you would never know because he's so humble and he's so truly focused on his business. But today, you get to hear his story. You get to hear the behind the scenes of this incredible legend of the mortgage industry. So, Brian, thank you so much for joining us this morning, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here and love the energy, by the way.
Well, I appreciate it. If nothing else, I make up for what I lack in knowledge. I make up for an enthusiasm. But like I said, plus I have guys like you who are always sharing their knowledge. So it's always the good thing for me to be the not the smartest guy in the room. But Brian, I'm excited to have you on the show because you are thriving. As I mentioned, you are a top producer. You're one of those guys who's always looking on how to expand and how to adapt to a changing market, which we're going to be talking about. But before we get into all that conversation, I want to hear your backstory, my friend, because you are a top producer. You are one of those guys that people look at in our industry like, wow, Brian continues to thrive. He continues to do well. But how did you get your start here? I mean, you're a New York kid. You probably weren't running the streets of New York thinking, yeah, I'm going to be a mortgage pro one day. So how did you get your start?
Yeah, it's a great question. I agree. Nobody, wakes up and their parents like, oh, you should get into mortgages, right? It's lawyer, doctor, whatever it may be. My story's pretty interesting, but I'll make it short. In college, I majored in communications, and after college, I said, "What do you do with a communication major?" I said, "Do I go on radio? Do I be on a podcast?" I had no clue what I was going to do. But the summer before I graduated college, I worked at a law firm. I was knocking on doors, serving subpoenas. I was photocopying. I was really good at stapling and putting holes in pieces of paper. And that was my job before I graduated college. I didn't know what to do. And right after college, I moved to New York City down on Gold Street. I had a lot of Gold Streets in my life. And I lived downtown near South Street Seaport on Gold Street. And I was working at this law firm, and it was a 9-to-5 job. And after like a month or two, I was like, wow, this can't be what I'm doing every day. There's only so many holes I can punch in this piece of paper. I had a college roommate who graduated a semester before I did and was working at a company called AmeriQuest Mortgage, which is long out of business. And he lived upstate New York in Hopewell Junction. And he called me and he's like, hey, I'm coming to the city. I got a limo. I'm going to take you out. And I was like, this guy? I was like, what's he doing, right? I was like, sure, come on down. Let's do this, right? So long story short, he comes to the city. He's like, I'm doing mortgages. I was like, is that illegal? I'm like, what the hell? I had no clue, right? I was like, wow. But I think at the time I was making, I think it was $12 an hour, something close to that. And I thought I was doing really well, but I didn't have a limo. I wasn't going out. I wasn't buying bottles at a club. I was, still kind of happy hour. I was looking for the deals, right? I was going for the $1 beers versus the $20 martinis. So long story short, my friend comes to the city. I learned a little bit that he's doing mortgages, and I was intrigued. And I said, get me a job. Like, this sounds like amazing. I was like, and by the way, he wasn't making, so much more, but even $1 more to me was like gold, right? And they opened an AmeriQuest office in downtown Brooklyn, which was, 2 subway stops where I was living in the city. And I called them and I said, hey, I'm looking for a job. And the manager, who was a friend of mine now for 20 years, who no longer does it, at the time says, my office is full. Like, I don't have a job for you. He's like, what's your experience? I was like, 0. I was like, I can photocopy really, really well. And he's like, all right, well, keep checking in with me, but I have no space. They had 14 seats. Long story short, I bought books. I bought like 14 mortgage books. So I had a lot of time in my hand between punching holes in paper. And I bought like Mortgage for Dummies, What's a Mortgage, different kind of products. I read these books and I kept following up with this guy in Brooklyn in AmeriQuest Mortgage. Long story short, I started February 2004. After calling, once a month and saying, hey, I'm still here. I'm ready to come in. Job opened up February 2004. I started at AmeriQuest. My first day in the job, he's like, you got to go to training for 2 weeks. I was like, training? I was like, I'm not going to training. I was like, I just read 14 books, dude. I was like, I got this. My first month, I closed 14 loans, and the rest is kind of history. Yeah.
Bro. That is one of the craziest stories I've actually legitimately ever heard. The persistency and the tenacity just to make it happen is clearly, and it shows exactly who you are and why you've continued to succeed and why you're the top producer that you are. But that is awesome. So you read these books, you get in there, you close 14 loans. I'm sure everybody's like, who is this kid, Brian? Like, he's a machine in here. And again, and now it just shows your work ethic up to today. You have continued to make Scotsman's Guide. You've closed over $6 billion which is just absurd. Anybody in the industry knows what an incredible feat that is. And now I want to kind of shift gears because clearly you've got the tenacity, clearly you've got the work ethic, but we all know we're kind of and you went through the crash of 08, 09. You know that there were some difficult times there, but today we're seeing it. I wouldn't compare it to 08, 09. I think it's very different. I think it's very unique. But how are you continuing to thrive now in the market that we're in? Because clearly you're doing a great job still.
Oh, I'm trying hard. It's for everybody out there. It's not an easy market. I'm not going to tell you it's an easy market. I will tell you that I'm still doing well for the market, but it is the worst year that I've personally had in mortgages and maybe my whole career, right? So, and it's not for lack of trying, it's market driven. And I think that part of it also is, for me, I'm using it as a rebuilding time, which I'm pretty excited about, which is focusing on things that I can do that will help my business, not just today, but for the future, right? So I'm very focused on that. I'm always thinking of different ideas. I'm very self-motivated, where when I put my mind to something, I got to figure out a way to get it done. And I think it's a great idea. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? But unless you try, you don't know. And I tell people all the time, I try almost anything kind of work related that's compliant at least once, right? I've run billboards. I've done every advertisement you can think of. And my business up until today has always been 100% referral based from people. And I'm starting to, I've never gotten business from social media yet. I mean, it's coming, we're working on that. I've been on social media now for a year. So before working where I work now at Guaranteed Rate Affinity, as you can see the sign behind me, I was at a big bank, and at a big bank, compliance is a little bit different. Of course, we have compliance here, but I just was never on social media. I didn't want the risk. I didn't want to keep going through every video and things of that nature. So here I'm starting to dabble a little bit, and I'm looking to kind of expand markets with my business and kind of adapt to what's happening today.
Nice. There's a lot I want to unpack there. But first, I have to say, you just, as a top producer, as one of the professionals in our industry, that may be one of the most humble comments I've ever heard from anybody I've had on the show of all time, saying that even you're struggling. Most top producers are like, oh no, I'm doing good, I'm thriving, but it was real. They're like, ladies and gentlemen, go back and listen to what Brian just said. This is a very unique market. We are all struggling. And even guys like yourself, Brian, this is a tough year. The fact that you can admit that when so many others are they sweep it under the rug and try to say, oh no, it's all sunshine and rainbows. It's not. You have to adapt. And even yourself, like you said, you're looking for the future. This is a long game. It's not a short game. It's not just, running a few ads, getting a few new leads in the pipeline. It's how do I build my business long term? And even as you said, you're looking for new ways. Social media. Everybody knows I love social media. So I'm I want to kind of turn to that for just a second,
Sure.
because you started this journey on social media. You even mentioned like, hey, you've been doing this for a year and it's still slow growth. I tell people there's no such thing as an overnight success on social media. It takes time. It is a long game. What kind of turns you on to social media? What made you think of like, hey, I need to be showing up on social media. I need to be building a brand. What kind of started that journey?
Yeah. So my brand's always been me, right? I'm Brian Scott Cohen. And I use the middle name because there's a million Cohens, right? People always ask me, well, why do you use the middle name? Well, if you ever look up the word Cohen, there's Cohen Optical, there's Steve Cohen, there's a million Cohens, right? So I am use full name. I've always been branding myself. I feel that believing in yourself and coming through with what you say is 100%, the most important thing for referral partners that you work with, right? Because they always think of, oh, I'm going to go to XYZ person. I don't want to be felt or like, I don't want to be like, hey, I work for this company, because there's, I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 of me. When I was at a bank, there was 7,000 to 10,000 loan officers, but there was only one Brian Scott Cohen. And I needed to build that and make sure people understood the difference between going to me or the man or woman that sits next to me, right? And I believe there's a difference. There's a difference of how much you actually care about the transaction. I believe there's a difference of knowledge. I believe there's a difference of experience. I'm not a young buck anymore. I've been doing this for, just about 20 years. I'm 43 years old. So I think experience is a big part of it. And then with the social media, to answer your actual question, started off on a tangent, I just think that I started it because so many people were on it, and I'd be at events and they'd be like, oh, did you go to this thing? I'm like, what thing? And they're like, oh, it was posted on here. I'm like, what? Posted where? So I just found that I got to know people that, would just call me and say, hey, Brian, talk to this client. I got to know them more on a personal level, because I feel like people kept posting like, oh, today in New York City, it's a big first day of school for kids for public schools. So I've seen, 30, 40 people that I know with their kids in their first picture. And I like it. It's cute. And I can, send them a message. Hey, your kids look adorable. Love, whatever it is, blue hair or your mohawk or whatever your kids had going on day one. So I just feel that it keeps me more in the know. And I also thought that, I have the opportunity to try it. And again, I'm a believer of trying it, once and see how it goes. And I wanted to try it because when you don't have something, you always want to know, you always look at it. When I was at a big bank, it was, hey, can I go on social media, or why shouldn't I, pros and cons? And I wasn't doing it. I was like, oh, I'm losing out on all this business. The reality is maybe I wasn't, but at least I tried it to know.
Dude, that is absolutely, first and foremost, I love to use your full name, Brian Scott Cohen. Like it stands out when you see it. Number one, there are a lot of Cohens in the world. I 100% agree with that. But having that it's a differentiator. And I love that it is your brand. So many people ask me, well, like, Josh, I need to come up with a slogan, or I need to come up with a logo. And it's like, why? Like, people use us for us. Like, our friends and our family, they don't think of our slogan and our logo. They think of Brian. They think of Josh. They think of who we are, the relationship, the rapport, the trust, the respect that we've built with them. And that's exactly it, to your point. And that's why I tell people, use your name, because heaven forbid, none of us like to hop mortgage companies or to change companies. But if you are, and some companies, they always like, well, Josh, be careful what you're saying with this, because we want our LOs to support our company. Of course you support your company, but ultimately it's the person behind the company. Like, it's the Brians of those, the Brian Scott Cohens of the world. It's the Josh Fitzes of the world. That's who people do business with. And it's, to your point, especially when we're using social media, because we're the ones out there. We're the ones commenting on their kids' first day of school, saying, hey, Sally, little Johnny looks great going to school today. Like, that's the relationship we're building. Again, guaranteed rate affinity is awesome, but that's not the one commenting and building that relationship. Sure. And I love that you mentioned the social media thing and giving it a try. So many people think right now, and even yourself, being that you're a top producer and just starting over a year ago, you're doing it. People are like, well, I'm too late to the game with social media. I'm far too behind the eight ball. I'm like, no, get started today. Start building those relationships, having those conversations. Because if you don't ever do it, and if you don't ever try, like you said, you at least got to try. Because if you don't, you're going to get surpassed.
Absolutely.
So I want to shift a little bit too, because you even mentioned this as we were chatting about this leading up to it, and you mentioned as we were starting this conversation that even in a market like today, you're still even expanding. You're like you said, you're trying new things. You're expanding into new markets. Your team is actually growing, which baffles my mind because so many other companies out there they're laying off LOs. They're saying, "Hey, sorry, business is slim. You got to go somewhere else," and you're like, come over here, like, hey, let's go, let's ramp this up. So that has to be a risk, but at the same time, you're building for the future. How important is that for you and like looking forward to building in the future?
I think it's super important. You always kind of have to, the way my mind works is constantly thinking, right? And I think that's what helps make me, right? I'm not a person who's content and done. I'm at a point still in my career where I want to grow and I see something bigger for myself. And I think that you always kind of have to try and be looking at what's the next step. And no one can predict the market, but I can predict the activities that I want to do and the relationships that I have. And, sometimes you have to take some of your own money and spend it and invest in your business, right? There was really great years in the mortgage business, right? Everyone had 21 and 2020 and, the biggest years maybe ever or second biggest ever in the, lending landscape. So look, you have to reinvest in yourself at times where it's not a booming market and you have to plan for the future.
The fact that you, again, a guy who is a top producer is even looking to that's what that's the mentality. Like you said, that's the mindset we need to have, planning for the future, investing now. Even people are like, well, Brian, like, I can't, like, it's slim pickings as it is, man. But it's really doubling down and focusing on the efforts that are going to help us thrive, that are going to help us grow. Because again, I hate saying it, but there's a lot of our friends throughout the industry that probably aren't going to make it. So now is the time to be really focusing on our efforts, what are we doing day in and day out? How are we growing our businesses? And like you, what an incredible opportunity to come and work with the Brian Scott Cohen team to learn from one of the best of the best. So if you're listening to this, reach out to Brian and his team and see and you even said too, you're just not just in New York anymore, Brian, you're expanding throughout the country.
We are. Yeah, very excited about it. And I've always been kind of a one-man loan officer kind of team. I have an amazing team behind me, the best support staff in the industry. They're hands down the best in the industry, best processing, best underwriting, best kind of team management. And we're kind of going out there and bringing it to people who are looking to step outside the box, be kind of part of a team. And we have relationships all over the country with real estate agents, with companies, and we're looking to expand, which is, like you said, Josh, very, very unique in this market. And we're expanding to loan officers. So, if you have experience, if you're looking for guidance, if you're looking to be paired with, a top originator and looking to continue in this business, hit us up for sure.
So you mentioned, I want to hit on this just real quick because I know, knowing your business and learning even more about it recently, real estate partners now more than ever, being able to add true value to them. I like to call the white glove service. You go above and beyond for your clients. How important is that? And how are you really taking that to the next level right now? Just because, again, having those referral partners, having those realtor partners is absolutely critical to the future growth. So what are you and your team really doing and focusing on with those relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So we kind of are a little bit selective on who we work with and spend our most time on. My ideal referral partner is someone who gets is mutually benefiting. It's not just, hey, give me your client, right? We do a lot of stuff with training, with education, joint events, joint marketing, right? I'm a true partner when people ask me to be a partner, and I want to be their partner. I want to grow together. And that's one of the most important things you can do. You can't just be in it for send me your client, right? You need to be a team and work with them to help them as well. So I'm very big in being a team. But my biggest thing is I believe in, if I tell you something and I'm going to do it, where 99.9% of the loans we fund that we pre-approve, which is an incredible stat. And if we don't fund it, it's very rare. And it's just, I feel like the backing that I have also of the company, that they truly believe in and care about the customer, which is unique, right? In my mind, it's unique. And they give me some flexibility. where, you know, we have some products that we can fund things that are that we believe in is what I would say.
Dude, that is awesome. And the fact that you see it as a partnership. So many people are like, oh, I just need to collaborate. I need to collaborate. And it is kind of a one-sided thing. The fact that you're always looking for relationships, that it has to be mutually beneficial. I tell people that all the time. If it's not, if it's one-sided, somebody always gets burned. It always ends up being harder on the relationship than anything else. So find those partners, find whether it's realtors, CPAs, attorneys, whoever it is, whoever you're doing business with, make sure it's mutually beneficial. That's not just one side. It's, you know, it's a give and get relationship that you're both working together. And like you said, it's a true partnership. And I tell people all the time, you really need to focus on the partnerships, because ultimately that's what's going to last the test of time. So Brian, that is absolutely incredible wisdom from you. And as we start to wrap this up, like I said, I want to be respectful of your time. What's one thing that you would, for all those originators out there who maybe are struggling a little bit, that are trying to kind of find themselves, reinvent themselves, or really just, again, try to make it through this market, what's a little bit of advice you would give them in a time like now?
Look, so it is a hard time. Like, I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. I do think that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So as much as you can stick it out, you should stick it out. And I understand people out there that can't, right? People have bills and liabilities, and, you know, this is a commission job mostly, right? Some companies pay salary. I completely understand that. You know, I would tell you that invest in yourself if you can right now. Take the time to think about where the business is happening and how you can be part of certain markets or certain real estate companies, or maybe it's social media, or maybe it's buying leads, and think about, you know, hey, where are people buying homes? Where are they getting mortgages? You know, before our call, we talked about my market, right? I'm in New York City. And I was telling Josh that, you know, 60% of all the transactions it's cash, right? Which is great, but for someone who needs to lend money, it's not the best thing, right? So we're expanding, and you have to look at going outside your box, going outside your comfort zone, and find where the business is. Do the research and due diligence first, and then get out of your seat and go get it. It's the bottom line.
Dang, dude, that is so simple, but so profound. Like, I don't think you understand what you just said to everybody right there. Number one, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Ladies and gentlemen, from somebody who's been doing this, as Brian has for so long, we go through these cyclical cycles, the ups, the downs, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. Invest in yourself. Take the time to invest in yourself. And then third, look where the opportunities are. Look where the puck is going, ladies and gentlemen, not where the puck was. Look where it's going. Stop focusing on 2021 and the years that were incredible. Focus on those opportunities. And then four, I love what he said here. Get your freaking butt up out of the chair and get after it. Make it happen. Stop sitting there just hoping opportunities are going to fall on you. That's not how top producers like Brian do it. They make it freaking happen. Brian, this has been an absolutely brilliant conversation. I cannot thank you enough for all the wisdom that you shared. Ladies and gentlemen, go back and watch this one. Share this with your teams, because Brian shared so many freaking little nuggets of wisdom through this entire episode. I am truly grateful and humble for all that he was willing to share today. So Brian, thank you so much for being here and showing up, my friend. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, go out and rewatch this episode. Huge shout out and thank you to Mario Trotta and his team as well for introducing myself and Brian. Go check out Mario and the collab project. They do a great job with bringing like-minded people together. So Brian, Mario, everybody, we appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time for all of you to go show up, hustle, repeat every day. See ya.